doesn't like a good trilogy? Time to cap off this little collection of Sonic reviews with a look back on the entirety of Sonic Prime Season 1. Yes, Season 1. No, I don't care what Netflix says when they release the show in 3 batches and calls it 3 seasons. It was conceptualized as 1 season and arbitrarily broken up so Netflix can keep your subscription for much longer than one 23-episode drop. That's why it took this long for this review to come out, as well as a bit of a sickness. I wanted to wait till all 23 episodes of this whole story release, so we have maximum context for the story. With that said, let's begin the rundown. It was just a normal day for Sonic and friends, your everyday foiling of Eggman's evil plan of the week. This time, the Mad Doc is looking to harness a mysterious stone known as the Paradox Prism. Choosing to forsake the warnings of his friends, Sonic crashes into the prism, destroying his reality in the process. Now, Sonic wakes up in what remains, a series of alternate dimensions called the Shatterverse. Each with one thing in common: Sonic never existed in any of them. To restore his home and his friends, Sonic must learn humility and unite the shattered pieces of the Paradox Prism before the evil Chaos Council and alternate universe League of Eggmen could get their hands on them first. But this is a battle he cannot fight alone. In order to save the day, he must learn to rely on his alternate universe friends. One thing worth pointing out is the animation. You can see it, it's freaking gorgeous! Sonic Prime is animated by Canadian TV giant Wildbrain, and they have stated in their long and storied history, Sonic Prime is hands down their most ambitious and expensive project they have ever worked on, and that effort shows. If you saw Wildbrain's current run on Ninjago, you could know that they excel in making characters incredibly expressive and lively. They're absolute masters of action sequences, with extensive one-shot fights and use of squash and stretch to make fighting all the slicker and more interesting to look at. Sonic Prime takes what Ninjago establishes and ramps it up to 11. This show is gorgeous, with expressive character animations that rival even the most praised cutscenes from games like Sonic Unleashed. This extends to the action as well, being incredibly dynamic and makes almost full use of the powers of every character in the show. Nothing looks stale, and it isn't just spinning balls bouncing against each other for multiple minutes. It makes every action scene a spectacle, and you never get bored by it. Well, almost never get bored. We'll get to that. The acting is also absolutely stellar. No offense to the gang doing the games in America, but you're gonna have to contend with the vocal majesty that stems from a far-off land known as Vancouver, Canada. Since Sonic Prime is a Canadian show, Canada has specific laws requiring homegrown talent to do the voice work. As such, for the first time since 2010, the entire Sonic crew has been temporarily recast. And is it wrong to say, I want to keep most of these new guys? Because they're brilliant. Devin Mack as Sonic allows TheBlue Blur to deliver a lot more emotional rage to his character, still bringing in the aspects of charisma and cool, but there's a vulnerability and a naivete to him in a much more natural way. It's no, I'm supposed to be the fastest, I was too slow to save my buddy, but hardly anything ever is. Ashley Bell brings a new degree of scratchiness to Tails' young voice, making him sound a lot more like a young boy, and is able to capture a new side of Tails with one of the central characters, 9, a more shot-off and edgy Tails who never had a Sonic to keep his life positive. The legendary Vincent Tong Kai from Ninjago gives Knuckles a lot more of a Brooklyn accent, surprisingly. But it really works and makes him equal parts cool and surprisingly cute. And please, God please, Kazumi Evans is the best Rouge we have ever had in the entire franchise's history. Ian Hamlin as Shadow, Shannon Chen Kent as Amy, ooh mama! Can we move Sonic Team to Canada? Just asking for a friend. As we move on to discussing the story, one thing worth pointing out that helps you put the whole show into perspective is understanding why Sonic Prime exists, and that starts by looking at previous Sonic shows. Sad AM, as the fans call it, was a show designed to introduce kids to the very westernized lore Sega developed for Sonic, since the games didn't have much of a story to show at the time. It was very different from what the games presented, but in line with things like the comics. It's Sega's way to get kids to understand who they wanted Sonic to be at the time. The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, which aired at the same time, was a more comical alternative depiction for Sonic for younger audiences, that favored a lot more of the simple approach of the games where it was Sonic and Tails versus Robotnik, just with a lot more of a Looney Tunes edge. Sonic Underground was... you got me, I kinda have no idea why this exists. Sonic X was conceived to be what Sad AM was for the early 2000s, where all branches of Sonic were consolidated with being back in line with the original Japanese vision of the franchise, then letting each region create their own Sonic lore. This is many children's introduction to what is considered normal Sonic these days, including me. And Sonic Boom was an experimental offshoot meant to once again be a standalone Western take on Sonic, but is meant to advertise a huge multimedia push of comics, games, and toys. And Sonic Prime is most like Boom, but trying to appear like X, It's meant to appear to be the most faithful to the current game iteration of Sonic, down to the production team insisting that the show is canon to the games, but the true purpose of the show is an advertisement. It has no games or comics to promote, but what it does have is legions of action figures and playsets. They're solid toys too, mind you, but knowing that Prime is first and foremost a toy commercial helps you understand why the show is what it is, why it gone for the multiverse angle. Not because the multiverse is the narrative flavor of the week, but because it's an excuse for more and more toys. In this show, we have an Eggman-ruled world, a jungle world, a pirate world, and an empty void, each with their own variants of Sonic and friends for kids to collect. It's a narrative excuse to give us Knuckles as a pirate, a feral Tails, or a robot Amy. All marketable ideas that you can then shove into a 5-inch blister box. It's like those old amusement park plushies that footed out Sonic for any occasion, like a St. Patrick's Sonic, a Valentine's Amy, or Tails in jail. So let's keep that in the back pocket, because for all the crazy reimagining this show does to the Sonic characters we know and love, I also feels like it didn't do enough to warrant it. While the characters do fundamentally change based on the world they come from, many of the twists don't feel like they're a loving deconstruction of the cast that we know, and more so just a lame excuse for reskins with no thought put into most of them. We have Rouge, a daring and charismatic thief, get a pirate variant. Maybe she's a backstabber, or the more negative traits due to the nature of being a pirate amplify her more, or she's just a generic girl boss pirate crew member with no discernible character traits. Knuckles is a lone survivor of an extinct race who keeps to himself on an island and is hardened by the isolation. Imagine his version in a lone jungle wasteland. He's paranoid because it's funny, I guess. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason to the character choices to show what they would be like without Sonic, or the usual world they lived in. It's just character traits drawn from a hat, slapped onto a recognizable Sonic character, and bam, new toy to sell on the shelf, and the writers didn't have to do their research. Every now and then we'll get a character or two that takes advantage of the idea, like Nine, who is grown bitter and jaded because he never had a Sonic to help him through the worst parts of his life. But it's too little in a massive roster of variants. And at least Shadow's amazingly written before he gets immediately sidelined after every appearance he has in this show. And then we have the characterization of Sonic himself. Ooh boy. Now I'm not that kind of person in the Sonic community who has a firm belief that Sonic should act like this, or act like that, or whether his character is allowed to develop. I know there's been a ton of controversy over Sonic's wavering characterization between games and mediums, and frankly, I just think Sonic's kind of malleable. He could be a static ideal we could aspire to be. A relatable little goofball learning to understand what it means to be a hero and part of a family. Or in Prime's case, a reckless go-getter who needs to learn that every action has consequences, and he needs to learn to step up and mature. And you know what? I dig that idea. I think it's a solid interpretation. In concept. Cause in execution, Sonic's character is the poster boy for Prime's biggest problem that really drags the show down. It's too repetitive. The overarching story is ironically too short for the episode count it has. So the writers do everything in their power to stall things out, undo progress in the story, or outright regress character development. Hell, for the final batch of episodes, it is non-stop fighting like it's friggin' Transformers 3 up in here, just to jingle keys in front of your kid, and it is exhausting. Nothing progresses, it's just battling happening for an hour. And Sonic's character encompasses all three of these aspects. He will do something one episode and undo it in the next. He learns one lesson and then forgets about it. He tries the same strategy over and over for literal episodes even though it's obviously not going to work. Sonic here is not a character. He is a plot device. He is whatever the writers want him to be this week. He is not a character driving the plot is driving him. And if that's the way you're telling a story all about Sonic learning and developing to be a better person, congratulations. You did the complete opposite, because you're not allowing him to grow for any longer than 5 minutes at a time before taking it all away. It's not authentic, it's not natural, it's not good writing. And as the episodes go on, while they start solid with unique scenarios to keep you hooked, as you watch the season, the repetition of Sonic's character and the stale formula of each episode becomes more and more apparent. Once you make it for the final third, you are exhausted and you just want it all to end. And that hurts to say. It hurts that I'm looking at something with my favorite character and not only calling him an idiot, but that I want it to be over already. And now that it is over, I just kind of feel nothing after it all. It's beautifully animated, wonderfully acted, I love the toys it's advertising, and there's some great characters and ideas here. Shadow and Amy I think are the best they've ever been written in years, and Nine is amazingly written for the first 2/3, but the poor story structure, missed opportunities, and ludicrously slow character development hold the show back in what could have been and should have been the best Sonic TV show ever made. But now Sonic Prime just stands side by side with the other shows as just another oddball attempt to bring him to television. And with that crippling missed opportunity, I have no choice but to give Sonic Prime a
badass.
Despite all the aesthetic pluses, the script's major problems resulted in an ultimately forgettable and slow-feeling binge that left a bad taste in my mouth. But what do you think about Sonic Prime? Do you feel as burned as me, or did you see more glimmers in there, or it has become the gold standard for Sonic TV? Let me know, and leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. But now I can rest easy, knowing that there is no other Sonic show happening anytime this year.
What?